For our final keynote speaker, I'd like to welcome to the stage Deon Clark. We invited Deon Clark to speak today because he's really an inspirational speaker on the issue of equity, which is one of the core problems we have to address. We're ignoring so many of the young people today who might be Latino, they might be Native American, they might be African American, or they might be low income, who aren't being prepared for success. And Deon Clark works directly with these young people. He works in workforce development as CEO of TCI Solutions. He's also chair of the board of the Legacy Initiative, which works with trying to improve educational opportunity for young people. So let's welcome to the stage Deon Clark.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'll bring this mic down a little bit. First, I appreciate, Bill, you give me an opportunity to speak at this particular event. I had to take a lot of my comments off after listening to Governor Lewis, and what he's saying applies universally across all our communities in this particular area. And so I am going to just add a little more detail from my perspective on some things that I think we also need to take note of. The fundamental question that I consistently ask is, when we look at the minds that are in the room, the folks that you all are associated with, the years of work that we've been sort of putting in to address this issue of how is it that there are young people who wake up in the morning and they have the same level of intelligence the next day than they had the day before. There was no learning that took place that day. How is that even possible that someone can go 18 years of life and cannot read? When we have the number of people, the number of minds in this room, the systems that have been put in place over decades, the sheer amount of funding that has been allocated, how does a kid fail to be able to read? And then when we look at overall in Phoenix and in the state of Arizona, where we have so many young people who have made a decision to simply leave school. Though progress has been made, there's still something that's nagging at us as to what is in the mind of the folks who didn't get it right, the young people who we did lose. What actually happened? And what is it that maybe we missed? And it's that piece where if we dig a little bit deeper, with the minds in the room, the resources, we can most certainly patch that up. So I want to share some perspectives that I have on why we may be missing some of these young people when we know the opportunities do exist. We know that there are training programs. We know that CTE programs exist. We know what the community colleges offer. There's WIOA funding out there. There's scholarships. There's different grants. There's a large amount of community organizations such as the United Way where they can wrap around a young person and make sure they're whole. Yet somehow we keep losing them. There are folks making a decision that I simply don't want to know anything else. I'm okay making $4 an hour. I'm fine with that. So I'm just going to step through a couple of things that I would ask everyone in here to consider, because I'm not going to speak on a systemic level, but at the individual level as to what does each of us do, what is our actual role in this process, and do we even know, are we aware of where we are? Are we really a part of the solution, or could we, unbeknownst to us, be a part of the problem? So my first point here is how we view the young people. And I'm careful how I say this, because there are a lot of people who are in positions where your job may be to help young people. You may be a counselor. But how do you really see them? What is your real, true life perspective when the kid who smells bad because they're homeless, they cannot articulate themselves very well because they have not taken school either seriously or circumstances have prevented them from learning to the level they need to learn? Their shoes look beaten. Their breath smells horrible. Your job is a counselor, but what do you really think about that kid when they step in front of you? Do you really have a bias? Is there something deep down where you really don't want to deal with this kid? it would be more preferred that go somewhere else. Let me deal with a kid that doesn't have as many issues. How do you actually view them? And the reason I say this is important, you all, every one of us has biases. There are things that sort of, maybe we are aware of them, maybe we're not aware of them, that cause us to behave certain ways. There's times where I walk in the room and I can sense if I am not wanted in that room. You do not have to tell me I'm not wanted. I can sense it because your presence alone, the way you really feel about me, you can't hide that. Meaning I can sense it, so I may walk out. Even though you didn't say anything wrong, you did nothing to violate your own internal policies, you did everything by the book, but because deep down you really don't like me, I sensed it and I walked away. And you can never be held responsible because, in effect, you didn't do anything on the surface. It's how you truly felt about me that caused me to walk away. I'm saying that because so many of these young people, we're charged with helping them. But we have to make sure that we indeed want to help them. You actually have to want to, and if you don't, you have to ask yourself, why? What is the issue I have with any particular group of people? And how do I work through that? Because I refuse to believe the systems are that broken, because I'm here and you're here. And we didn't have anything called CTE. There was no robotics program. There was nothing. Nothing in Chicago where I grew up that had that. Yet, at age 18, my job was to operate nuclear reactors on military warships. By age 25, I am the guy that's called a senior nuclear reactor operator. You do not split the atom unless I sign saying you know enough to split the atom. How did I do that? If the system was that broken. For me, I was fortunate that the people within the system, I happened to bump into the right ones who leveraged the system, who had the right intent, so I didn't miss out. Had I bumped into the wrong people, and there were a few along the path, I would have weeded myself out as well. So this first part, as we consider, how is it that we haven't come as far as we believe we should, we need to ask ourselves, I'm part of the solution. I'm supposed to help the young folks, but do I really want to? Do I hide behind my title such that I can take credit for helping, but I actually don't help anyone? I make sure I don't smile so that the kid who needed me goes to somebody else because I made sure I didn't smile. I made sure I didn't speak the language that they can understand. I spoke 2 levels above them knowing they're going to get frustrated because they don't understand what I'm saying. They walked out. Those are things we might do, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Point being, are you a part of the problem as to why we can't move this needle? Because the system in and of itself, it can be improved upon, but this same system got you here. And we didn't have iPhones, we didn't have Google, but we're here, meaning something does work. So I would ask you all to consider your role in this, how you truly feel about these underrepresented populations, because if you find that deep down you have biases against them, whatever they may be, it's not that you're right or wrong, it's recognize what those biases may be so that in your professional capacity, you can check them at the door. You can intentionally check them at the door so that you are more welcoming. The second piece here, which is sort of near and dear to me, and I see Mr. Brian Spicker here with Valley of the Sun United, where we spend a lot of time working together to develop some programming, and one of the things that I would ask you all to consider, if you're working with young people and your intent is to get them to the employer, how did you present them to the employer? Did you tell the employer, I have a group of kids who are homeless, they have post-traumatic stress disorder, they come from broken families, they're poor. Did you tell them that first and then say, by the way, can you please give them an opportunity and hire them? Did you do that? Because if you did, I'll speak on behalf of industry because I'm a business owner. I will not hire somebody where you told me they're a problem. And you don't get to clean it up at the end and say, oh, by the way, but they're qualified. No. You led with all of these negative things. And then you ask me to do you a favor and hire somebody that you put a label on. Why would I do that? I can only imagine if somebody presented Deon Clark as my challenges first, my qualifications second. This is what they would have said. Here's a young black man from a poor part of Chicago on the south side. He has a brother serving 285 years in prison. He has a younger brother that was released from jail not too long ago. He has an older sister that was released from prison a couple years ago. He has a father that they call Smoke in Chicago. They put a hit out on him when I was 8 years old. He was in and out. They'll then tell you that I had a single mom who did the best she could, but because we were poor, the stress of that, she died 4 years ago of cancer. Guarantee it's because of poor health and stress. But he has a certification. No one's hiring me. It has nothing to do with the fact that I may actually be the best. It's because you put that label on me first. You killed my chances. Doesn't matter what your intent was, you killed my chances because you did not say, I have a young man that is qualified for your job. You labeled it first and hoped that they hired me, meaning you set me up to be a charity case. Why would an employer come to the table with you if you said every person you deal with has issues? Why would they partner with you for their workforce and you're known for working with people with issues? Here's why I'm saying that. Don't start throwing stuff at me, because I'm one of the groups that has to work with these young folks. The reason I say that is this, you all. So much of our work is at that human level. We can never forget the businesses have one priority. They need to make the best hire. It has nothing to do with who they like, make the best hire, meaning how do we ensure collectively these young people are positioned? And you can make the argument how to tie in CTE, how to tie in business with education to do that. But at the end of the day, we don't hire for charity purposes. We have foundations for which we will give you some money and say, good luck with that. I don't hire based on you saying, do me a favor. Because if you did that in my case at a nuclear plant, we would all die. Period. You put somebody who's not the best in there, who's not qualified, we're dead. Here's why I'm saying that, and this is why I'm putting it on us again. Did we label these young people? Because I need to get grant funding sometimes, and the only way I'm going to get the funding is if I can prove I am dealing with folks who have less than the norm, or else I won't get funded. By essence, what you've done is the only way I can get my money is to label the kid, meaning the employer won't hire them. And then I'm pissed because you didn't hire the young people. But we set it up that way. So here's what I'm asking you to consider. When the young person comes through you, did you stick a label on them that's unjust? If you did, we're part of that problem. So we have to check our biases. We also have to check the fact that I don't want to label this kid unjustly and say they have these issues. Because in the real world in HR, employers can't even solicit that information. They can't even know if you're married or not, because it can be used discriminatingly, which is why we don't want to label our young folks, because they're you and I. Every one of you all, including myself, has had issues. Every one of you, life has hit you. If it hasn't, it will. Some of you all, it's hitting you now. But we're still here because you have a support system. But imagine if everything that happened to you, your employer found out. Every bad decision, every challenge, every poor member of your family who just does some wild stuff. Imagine if that kept being the narrative. You would not have that job very long. But they stand on you because you keep showing the quality first. So with our program, and as we bring ourselves together to collaborate, before they ever come in contact with the employer, we must remove the label that they're underrepresented. They're low income. They're minorities. They're a group of women. We say it as if that's a problem. Somehow when we say, oh, I have a group of minority students, what does that even mean? Is that the code word for give them a shot? Just give them a chance. They're minority. Come on. But we do it all the time, almost to the point where it's subconscious. We even mix low income with minority as if they're synonymous, and they're not. And it's not that it's done intentionally, but I'm asking you all to draw attention to it because these are some of the reasons as to why we have so many good people, so many good programs, but the needle doesn't move as far as we want it to. These are some of those reasons why it does not move. This third piece here, the messenger and the message for us who are engaging with those young people, their family members. How many teachers do I have in the room? Raise your hand. Be proud. Okay. How many businesses I have? Employers? Okay. It's not enough for you all. I can handle you all. You don't like what I say. Here's what I'm saying with the messenger, you guys. If a counselor were to go and talk about the opportunities in nuclear engineering, I can tell you right now, they will not be able to articulate it and show the same passion that I could as somebody who did it. It is no way they're going to get a student excited about this work the way that I could, because I have a unique experience by doing it. I will be able to really get young people and their families excited about those opportunities. So sometimes we have the right program, the right systems, but the people who are in front of the young people, they may not be the right messenger. And there's so many employers who are waiting patiently to be invited in who can help with the messaging. Because there are CTE programs, you used to be able to be a freshman to take them. Now you have to be a junior. The funding's not there because not enough people took advantage, so it keeps shrinking. I can only imagine if employers talked about their opportunities with the young people, more young people would be interested and would take advantage of some of the programs we have. So I would encourage everyone to consider who is the messenger that you send out to talk about the aspects that you do. Whether you're with the community supports, whether you're an employer, whether you're one of the education institutes, who is it that's actually speaking on behalf of your body of work? And is that the right person? And is the message correct? To answer that question, I would ask you all to consider this piece here. There is a language barrier when you start talking about low income. And a lot of the school systems here deal with high rates of poverty based on free and reduced lunch. I'll use Phoenix Union as an example. They're about 85%, give or take. Poor people speak a different language. If I am preparing dinner and I have a group of wealthy people coming over, it's all about the presentation. It needs to look like this. If it's a middle class group, quality becomes the prevalent factor. Is it gluten-free? Is it safe for me to eat this? Is my family going to be okay? Poor people, it's all about the quantity. Pure and simple. Is it enough? Meaning the eyes for which people in poverty see the world through may not be through the same lens as you and I. Meaning what makes sense to you, though you may be dead on, your message is right, it may not make sense to the person who eats once every 2 days. They just may not grasp this idea of a 401k, this idea that you can be at a job for 20 years. They're trying to eat today. So it's very hard to process something that sets me up 10 years from now when I'm trying to figure out how to eat today. So that message of understanding who are you talking to and how do you simply tailor the message so that what you want these young people to understand, they get it. You don't diminish your message, we simply tailor it to make sure we understand who are we actually talking to. Because everyone in here gets it. We're not the ones that have the issue here. It's these young people that we're wanting to be a part of the larger system so that they get engaged. So we have to make sure we understand what do they need to hear in order for them to do what you want them to do? What must those families hear for them to move in the direction that you want them to move? So that messenger is extremely important, as is the message itself. This fourth piece is tied to the third one, understanding the impacts of poverty. And I'll spend a few moments here. We grew up poor. And it is something about not knowing if you have what you need. It prevents you from thinking too far ahead into the future. There is something about every day seeing my family members struggle, my community members struggle, and then you telling me that I can do these great things, but the neighborhood doesn't support what you just said. My family structure does not support what you just said. This is real, you all. Young folks just don't stray away like that just because. When folks don't have their basic needs met, it causes you to think in ways that you and I may not grasp because it's not your reality, and you cannot imagine that if it's not real to you. You can't somehow fabricate in your mind, this is what it would feel like if I didn't eat. Well, actually, if you don't want to eat in 2 days, try it out. It sucks. And you'll get that sense of urgency after a couple of days of what are you willing to do to eat? So understanding this and not necessarily looking at it as students make excuses, but having a deeper understanding of the mindset of somebody who does not have their basic needs met. Why then does school not become as important as working a job to help pay the bills? That may not make sense to you and I, because your bills are paid. But I can guarantee you, if somehow you lost your job and that income stopped, and you had all these other prior commitments that you needed to satisfy, but you can't pay the bills, you would reorganize your priorities around making you and your family whole first. Then you would pick up those other things. Students do it every day. Every day. They think through, what do I need to do, number one, to get through the day? And that may not include geometry. It may not account for an economics class. It may be waiting for lunch to take that extra brownie so that my little brother eats at night. If you don't understand that dynamic, it's very hard to put in place programs if we're not very clear on what is the mindset of the young folks you're actually trying to help. This last piece here, and I'm going to wrap it up, the collaboration. I say all that to say that someone in the room understands everything that I'm saying. There are organizations that specialize in aspects of this, messaging. There are groups that work with young folks and understand what those issues are. There are educators that have a deep sense of that articulation agreements. There are employers who understand they do need these young people to be successful. The collective body does exist. It's a matter of how do we actually collaborate? And all that means to me is, does everyone know how to stay in their lane? Are you really comfortable letting me do the thing that I'm an expert in and letting the next person do the thing they're an expert in and you doing the thing that you're an expert in? Or do you simply need to be engaged in everything so that the view is you did it all? Is your agency claiming to do way more than it's capable of? By default, you've taken all the funding and the other organization who really specializes in one piece has nothing left, meaning the kid really didn't get what they needed because the two of you didn't come together. We talk about the collaboration all the time, but I know it is difficult because as an individual entity, you still have to make sure you protect the interests of your individual entity. But at the same time, there has to be a sense of, I know what I do well. Let me focus on that, but let me support the groups who do these other pieces well. Because collectively, you all, we actually do have everything we need to move these young people where we need them to move to. It's just that no one of us can do it by ourselves. It's not possible. It's too big of a challenge. So my closing thoughts are, I would encourage everyone to deeply understand what is our unique individual roles in this larger issue. Because there's way too many great minds in the room for us to still have this issue. And I firmly believe it's not that systemically we can't do it. We individually haven't reconciled our particular role in it yet, and we haven't all accepted our actual roles and allowed everybody else to do their part and be well at that part. So with that, again, I want to say I appreciate an opportunity to speak with you all. This is a very passionate thing for me because I am a living proof, as is many of you in this room. It is quite possible to come from the bottom and get to a point where you're successful. It is not an anomaly. It is truly a matter of leveraging the people who can help you and doing it in a systemic way. So this is not a far-fetched idea. It's too many of us in the room who made it, and you know your individual stories. You know how far you actually have come, so I ask you to consider what were the things that you had that allowed you to get to this point, and give that same thing to these young people. They do not need a handout. They do not need anything more than what you had. Give them what you had, and they'll become just as successful as you have, because they have the same resources that you were afforded. So with that, I appreciate you all's time. I'd like to bring Mr. Bill back up.